didn't hear the report though, but that's what Fox News is saying. Fox has a chyron that says strategic bombers are up. U.S. officials, Russian forces could see. Well, that's different. But the strategic bombers, though, was the report that they're up like right this second, or was it that they're generally been up today? I just saw on Fox News they had I didn't see what they said, but the chyron said strategic bombers are up. That's all it said. Yeah, it's saying it right now. Report strategic bombers are up. So Fox has somebody. CNN has a person. Erin Burnett's in Kyiv. So I'm nervous about this, but maybe it won't happen.
So strategic
the thing is, I don't know specifically. I didn't see the report. For all I know, they said something like, "Well, we have a report that all day strategic bombers have been up." That's different than "Oh, we just heard that 5 minutes ago they went up." So I don't know what the nature of the report was. I didn't hear it. I just saw the thing at the bottom. So again, I can't really speak to what they specifically said.
Yes, as evil neo-Nazis watching the Jewish man tell us about war.
It is 2:57. It looks like some people online did see that report from Fox News. So it says strategic bombers are up, but
strategic bombers are usually against civilian pilots.
Hold on, I think I can get it here. I think I can find it. Hang on. I'm seeing if I can find the actual report. No, I can't find it. I don't have it, so we'll see what happens. I have my eyes on a couple of streams. I've just seen it on Fox. They just went up. All right, it is right now, guys. It is 2:59. It is 2:59 a.m. Ukraine time, and again, there's some very concerning reports that there might be, in the coming minutes, some kind of airstrike attack on Kyiv. But we'll have to just see what happens. And it just says report strategic bombers are up. While I am watching the streams, let's hope it's a false alarm. All right, so it is 3 a.m. right now. It's 3 a.m. right now. Let's hope that it is a false alarm.
It's not gonna be.
I'm just watching the. Keeping an eye on the live shots and also seeing if there's any of the reporting here. Maybe it'll turn out to all just be this false rumor. Well, it's more than a rumor. See, this is interesting as we discuss this. So far, Rob Lee says, I haven't seen much evidence of Russian drones playing a key role either. It seems as though Russian forces are operating in a more restrained fashion than I expected. Maybe Putin underestimated Ukrainian resistance or is more concerned with Russian domestic opinion. He says also, the air assault operation also suggests Russia thought it could possibly achieve a fait accompli without killing that many Ukrainian troops or civilians by making a lightning push into Kyiv with light forces. It seems clear now they'll have to use armor to get there. Russia tried to land apparently like paratroopers at an airport near Kyiv today, and the reporting was that they were going to try to take the airport and then fly troops in. But they weren't able to successfully take the airport near Kyiv. But they didn't have armored troops. Well, I don't know if they had any armor with them, but it wasn't a big force. So, hey guys, it's 3:02. So far, I have not seen anything on the Kyiv stream, which is good news. Rubio just tweeted. Hold on. What did he have to say? Oh, look at this. He just tweeted, Marco Rubio just tweeted. I wonder if this is related to the 3 a.m. thing. He says, we have only seen the opening phase of Putin's barbaric plan, but it has been more difficult than he expected. There are now indications that Kyiv may soon be the focus of his rage, and then the entire world would come face to face with depravity not seen in 80 years. And he posted this at 3:01 Kyiv time. So he posted coincidentally, he posted basically right when this airstrike had been rumored to start. And it just makes you wonder. It makes you wonder: is he referring to that? It's really weird. It's really weird that it just got posted right then. I think by 80 years he means, beginning of World War II, 80 years ago. That is really weird. Just posted it 4 minutes ago. He says there are now indications. That's all he posted. He didn't post anything else besides that. Wow, that's so weird. Let's hope it was it seems too much of a coincidence that he would post it then. It seems like a really weird coincidence remember, CNN reported today, a couple hours ago, that an intelligence official told them there was going to be a 3 a.m. bombing of Kyiv, airstrikes. And then, as Georgie says, it's said on Fox News strategic bombers are up. And then he, at 3:01 a.m. Kyiv time, posts this. And somebody else I follow in Kyiv said that Ukrainian officials said that that they warned of a 3 a.m. Airstrike on Kyiv. And they went to the bomb shelter. Check flight. I'm assuming you're not going to see military aircraft like that on Flight Tracker. There's the U.S. drone is up, I guess, still.
Just waiting for a bright flash of light and the camera to go dark.
Where was that here? Wow, that's so weird. Plane noises on Kyiv cam? Hang on.
Yeah, I heard him.
I have to turn my sound on because I can't. Let me do this real quick so I can hear it. I put the sound on myself so I can actually hear it. But I'm hearing silence. I'm hearing and seeing silence so far. Let's hope that continues. It is so weird that got posted at that time.
Definitely bomber sounds. Or airplane sounds.
Oh, but just to be clear, Marco Rubio has been posting during the hostilities. He's been posting a lot of details about what Russia's going to do and like their different plans and stuff. And he's the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So this is he has heard something specific. That's very specific. You guys are here. I didn't hear anything. I have not heard anything. I haven't heard anything. I'm literally watching the Kyiv stream. I'm literally watching it live and listening to it here. I've been watching it and listening to it the whole time.
going to be putting the earphones on for a moment so I can hear better. You can't hear it during the earphone part, so I'll not keep them on for long. These earphones are pretty crap.
Oh,
Okay, so earphone plug is being broken.
and they wanted to land them there. So in theory, the idea was the plan was for Russia to take Hostomel today with their paratroopers and then land a bunch of planes just outside of Kyiv, probably with troops and stuff or equipment, and then probably attack Kyiv. But Russia wasn't able to take that airport today. So, but there was a lot of fighting. There's a lot of fighting, a pitched battle with like helicopters and stuff going on at Hostomel Airport. So I'll see if I see any other updates about the Hostomel thing. But that's interesting that he's saying that. Look at this. A source familiar, Natasha Bertrand. A source familiar with tonight's administration briefings to lawmakers tells CNN officials believe Russia has been facing greater resistance from Ukrainian forces than anticipated. But officials did not say whether Kyiv would fall. Still too early to say how it will play out. Georgie says, friends on site says there's fighting. I'll let you know if I hear anything else about Hostomel. The Kyiv live stream it's Reuters live stream. Just type in live Kyiv Reuters on YouTube and you'll find it. Oh, look at this. Nexta posted this. Hang on. Hang on. Nexta posted this. Tomorrow will be the worst. The office of the presidential advisor in Ukraine said tomorrow will be the worst day, more terrifying than today. That post is by Nexta from 4 minutes ago. This is the post that people saw. This was. I didn't even hear it. Aaron McLaughlin said first boom of day heard in Kyiv. I wonder if that's from Hostomel, but that was, 8 minutes ago. Hey guys, I follow this account. I don't know why they're saying this. I follow this account. They claim that Russia's launched rocket strikes against Kyiv. I don't know where they're getting this from. Maybe they heard of an explosion or something like that. But I do follow them. I don't know why they posted that 10 minutes ago. I don't know if they know anything that we don't, but I'm not aware of it, so. Here's an update about a lawmaker briefing here. Zachary Cohen. New Biden officials told lawmakers tonight that Kyiv is under attack from north, south, and east, that troops are approaching from various directions, but said it was too early to say whether it would likely fall. Officials also said Russia has faced greater resistance than anticipated. During the call, Secretary of State Blinken said he thinks this will be a bloody mess for Russia, but warned it could take a while. Per a person familiar with the call, this will take a long time to play out, Blinken said, according to the source.
Some of these chat comments are saying that they have people in Kiev that are confirming explosions.
Update from Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Oh no, this is British Ministry of Defense. British Ministry of Defense. British Ministry of Defense says Russian forces have highly likely captured Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Workers have reportedly been detained by the Russian troops. The Ukrainian armed forces have reportedly halted Russia's advance towards Chernihiv. Fighting probably continues on the outskirts of the city. That's in northern Ukraine, I believe. It is unlikely that Russia has achieved its planned day one military objectives. Ukrainian forces have presented fierce resistance on all axes of Russia's advance. this, a subway shelter now. A subway shelter now. I think that's in Kyiv. I would assume that's in Kyiv. He just posted this. Oh, look. Ilya Ponomarenko is a reporter in Kyiv. He just posted 5 minutes ago, Kyiv is now expected to sustain a Russian missile assault. Everybody take shelter and hold your fingers crossed for Ukrainian air defense, guys. He just posted this 5 minutes ago. He's a reporter in Kyiv, Ilya Ponomarenko. He posted this 5 minutes ago. Kyiv is now expected to sustain a Russian missile assault. Everybody take shelter and hold your fingers crossed. And then he posted this. He said, this is a picture of people in Kyiv. And right now.
Everybody makes fun of the way he pronounces
Bayana
Kyiv.
Paramanova.
Kyiv. Kyiv. Kyiv.
But this was not posted at 2:30 a.m. This was posted 5 minutes ago. And I don't know, if maybe he's responding to the same reports we heard. But he is there, and he's a reporter
Review cars.
with the Kyiv defense reporter. He's a defense reporter with the Kyiv Independent, and he just posted
People
this.
are trying to flee the city towards the west before
now it's
the
13 minutes
Russians
ago. No, it's
expand
23
south
right
from
now. He posted that 6
Chernobyl and
minutes
block the
ago.
road. It's going to be a while before they can advance south from Chernobyl. It took them essentially 2 days to capture it, and it's like 5 times longer from there to Kiev, and there's some amount of Ukrainian forces in between, but not everybody will be able to leave Kiev that wants to leave Kiev. And if the fighting hits,
Really appreciate all of our
roads while
moderators.
there's
Thank
a
you,
huge
moderators,
amount
and
of
all of our chat
civilians
rooms. I really
there, then
appreciate it. Thank
it's
you.
going to be really ugly.
Yeah, we got this tweet. Marco Rubio tweeted at 3 a.m. saying indications were that, something bad was going to happen in Kyiv, basically. Maybe it'll turn out to all be rumors, untrue reports. Hey, I'm going to leave that there for a second. Maybe we'll go
Now
back
we're
to
hearing
that.
bombers.
I'll just see if anyone else is posting anything. But that's really scary.
About to start seeing flashes.
Hearing some noise. I hear a plane or something. Hopefully it's not anything big. But I am hearing something more. For a moment I heard something louder. Let's hope turns out to be a false report. Oh, I'm hearing louder things. I'm definitely hearing louder things, but maybe it's not planes. I don't know. Spare a thought for the people in the Ukraine and in Kyiv who are doing this right now in a subway. All right, I'm not hearing the loud sound anymore, which is good. I want to show you this real quick. Hang on one moment. This is interesting from Neil Howard, who's actually in Kyiv. So Natasha Bertrand said, a source familiar with tonight's administration briefings to lawmakers tells CNN that officials believe Russia has been facing a greater resistance from Ukrainian forces than anticipated, but officials did not say whether Kyiv would fall. Still too early to say how it would play out. And Neil Howard says, weather seems like a stark change from previous assessments, most of which predicted Kyiv's fall within days.
A lot of people predicted it would fall in days.
RT says Ukraine ready to discuss neutrality. I haven't seen that. Georgie says never happening without him getting blanked by a nationalist SVU. I haven't seen that report. I can't. From what I understand, that's not something the population would go for. Let's see if there's any other reports here. It would be great if it just didn't happen. It turned out the anticipation was that the reports were wrong. The RT is Russian government media, by the way, just in case people aren't aware. Aurora Intel says, still quiet in Kyiv at the moment, though there are reports that Russian strategic bombers are in the air. Possible either U.S. intelligence got it wrong or that Russia changed its plans. It is now 3:31 a.m. 3:31 a.m. Very nerve-wracking. Very worrying. And there were multiple people in Kyiv who I've shown you. The defense reporter for the Kyiv, look, he posted this. Ilya Ponomarenko posted this about 15 minutes ago. He said Kyiv is now expected to sustain Russia a missile assault. Everybody take shelter and hold your fingers crossed for Ukrainian air defense. So he just posted that 15 minutes ago. David Tyler says one live feed has sirens. Is that coming from the? Thank you, David Tyler. By the way, I very much appreciate that. That's very kind of you, David. I mean, I don't. Is that because this feed, the Reuters does not have any sirens on it. David said he was watching a feed with sirens. Let me see if I can find any updates here. B&O News actually, they had a good idea. They actually read that statement. I showed you this before. Let's look at the statement. I'm like really scared. This thing here. So Nexta posted this. Alexei Arestovich. Let's see if we can find his social media. Here it is. Here it is. He posted it too. Look, he posted it too. He's Alexei Arestovich is he's an advisor to the president. Look what he posted. He said various sources write that missile strikes are expected at Kyiv at 3 o'clock, according to CNN. It's come out elsewhere too. At the moment, such strikes are considered probably. It should be noted that civilians are threatened with such strikes with very little probability. Okay, look what he said. He said, the heroic defense of our troops, the miracles that our Army, Border Guards, National Guards, and other structures is the main condition and the main reason he says we stop them today. In general, they are a failure. I think he means the Russian efforts. But then he says, look, therefore tomorrow will be the scariest day ever, scarier than it is today. Tomorrow they will turn on all they can do to break us psychologically and on the battlefield. But on the other hand, it will get easier, he says. There is no effect of sudden. The habit has started to form. You can't scare us with paratroopers anymore. Tomorrow there will be airstrikes, paratroopers, injuries, and half rounds. According to our intelligence, the opponent is stunned by the strength of resistance and at a very low pace of his progress. Let's endure tomorrow. It will be significantly easier for the third day.
40 kilometers in 2 days. That's in their breakthrough points is still pretty fast, but it's nowhere near driving speed. It's casual walking
He
speed.
thinks tomorrow they will turn on all they can to break us psychologically and on the battlefield. Wow. Euromaidan Press. Look. Oh, sorry. We showed you this already. We showed you. Presidential advisor confirms rumors that missile strikes are possible tonight in Kyiv. I think the rumor he was working. CNN had said that an intelligence source said it was going to be at 3 a.m. But that's not the only source of it. Neil Hauer, who I follow in Kyiv, said he heard it from Ukrainian sources. Where is it here? Where is it? I'll find it for you. So it wasn't only CNN saying it. See, Neil Hauer said reports from Ukrainian defense officials that a Russia bombing raid will hit Kyiv at 3 a.m. It's now 3:39 a.m. So good. It hasn't happened yet. But it wasn't just the CNN report. It's this. People keep saying on the real PAC stream there's sirens, but I'm watching. There can't be citywide sirens if I'm watching it. I'm literally watching. They can't be that loud. I'm watching a live stream from Maidan Square, and I don't hear any sirens at all.
This is Lviv. Lviv.
Here, this is where he's in the subway. See, posted up and ready for my night. This. Thing was built in 1 hour's time, but they haven't happened, which is great. But everybody's very nervous. Neil Hauer posted these photos. People sleeping on the ground. Look at this. Michael, I hadn't heard about the ghost of Kiev. I'll have to look into that. Somebody heard sirens in Lviv? I'll check it. I'm watching. I found a Lviv feed. It's silent. I don't know if it has sound on it though, but the Lviv feed I'm looking at is silent. Update. Look at this, guys. Isabel Kurdishian So people, well, I don't know if this is really new. She says, I'm in Kharkiv and do not appear to have any cell service, only able to connect the hotel Wi-Fi at the moment. But 12 hours ago, NetBlog said Kharkiv continues to take the brunt of network and telecoms disruptions, leaving many users cut off. Amid scenes of destruction as Russia targets the region, Kyiv is currently less impacted by outage. So I don't know if there's anything new going on with this. Hang on. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Thank you, Georgie. Thank you, Georgie, for messaging me. This was posted 9 minutes ago by Ilya Ponomarenko. He's a defense reporter in Kyiv. The city of Konotop in Sumy Oblast is under siege now. Russian military convoys are moving west towards Kyiv. So there's been a bunch of fighting in Sumy today, which is near Kharkiv. He just posted this at 3 in the morning. It's 3:30 in the morning his time. He just posted this. So I'll show you where Konotop is. He says the city of Konotop is under siege. Konotop is, that's like hundreds of miles, like a couple hundred miles away from Kyiv, I think. That's up here. That's 100 miles away from Kyiv. So he said that city's under siege. I'm hearing some planes, or maybe, I don't know. 85,000 people live in Konotop, in Sumy Oblast. I'm hearing, it sounds like planes or something. Oh no, I'm hearing some loud plane sounds. Is it traffic? I hope it's traffic. That was loud. I got really nervous. Man, I was actually really nervous. It got really loud there. People said it was a truck or train. It got quite loud. But he says troops are approaching Kyiv from the west, are moving west towards Kyiv. Russian military convoys are moving west towards Kyiv. So I don't know, are they coming? Presumably they'd be coming from up here. because Russia has been putting in troops. Well, has been fighting in Sumy today. So maybe they're going sorry. This way? Army truck, upper right cam? I didn't see it. Let me see if there's more. Oh, people said there was a truck. Again, I didn't see it. So that's good. I was looking at something else. So that is a concerning report. Again, I don't know. He just posted it. He said the city of Konotop in Sumy Oblast is under siege now. Russian military convoys are moving west towards Kyiv. He's a defense reporter in Kyiv.
Still fast advance. 2 days from this to this. If you take a comparison, it's like looking at Poland during the Second World War. It'd be from, say, Kaliningrad to about this distance. So it's looking like it's still pretty fast.
I am watching the live Reuters Maidan Square on YouTube. Look at this. Hold on. Look. Guys, breaking news. Kyiv Independent. Breaking news. Russian forces hold 85,000 person city Konotop under siege, moving to Kyiv. Sumy Oblast governor says a lot of the region's cities have been encircled by the enemy. Breaking news. A large military group is moving from occupied Sumy towards Kyiv. And this is very worrying. Thomas Thiener posted this. He says Russia proceeds exactly as in the plan that was publicized in October. That was, I don't know if the CIA intercepted it. He believes so, but I know it was talked about. Encircle, besiege Ukrainian cities, and starve, freeze the people into submission. So this has been talked about, the possibility that Russia could surround cities and then turn off the power, turn off the food. But this is, and that kind of thing, this is very worrying. The Sumy Oblast governor, Kyiv Independent, says a lot of the region's cities have been encircled by the enemy. In Sumy Oblast, this is really worrying. Wow. That's up here. Sumy Oblast has about 1 million people in it. So that's, you can see it's next to Kharkiv. It's this area of the country right here. So he says a lot of the cities have been surrounded. That's very, very concerning. Unbelievable.
Also gives birth to a pretty powerful partisan movement. Like the Germans realized when they overrun the Red Army but didn't take the pockets, a lot of the guys from the pockets
No, this isn't occupied. It's surrounded. The idea of surrounding a city is you don't go in the city. You surround it, and then you can cut off the food. You can in theory, cut off the power, cut off the water. Don't let anyone in or out, and just wait. Now, the power is still working, but as Thomas Thiener said, there was a plan talked about, which was possibly leaked plan in late last year, which said that Russia would encircle, besiege Ukrainian cities and starve, freeze the people into submission. A number of experts I read before the hostility started said that definitely happened, because if you want to take a city, you can either go directly in, but that requires very difficult urban fighting. The other option would be to surround the city and basically starve them out. It's starve and freeze them out. This is very scary. This is the first I've heard of this. And this is from the Kyiv Independent. They say the governor of that area says a lot of the region's cities have been encircled by the enemy. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Breaking news. Hans Nichols posted this. Look at this. Axios. Kyiv close to falling. Russian mechanized forces, which came from Belarus, are 20 miles outside of Kyiv, Austin told lawmakers tonight. I mean, if they want to drive there, they could get there, maybe I don't know how fast those vehicles go, but certainly within an hour.
There's a difference between getting to the city and getting the city all Stalingrad.
Austin told members.
But
Scoop, U.S. eyes training Ukrainian troops remotely. Axios. Secretary of Defense Austin said mechanized forces which came in from Belarus are 20 miles outside of Kyiv. He said that tonight. He said military officials are looking at ways to provide more defense equipment, including ammunition, to Ukrainian forces, but it's more difficult now with Russian troops swarming the country. Secretary of Defense Austin told House lawmakers tonight the Biden administration would support Zelensky's government as long as it remained viable, raising questions about continued U.S. assistance if the president flees the country, is captured or killed in combat. Western officials fear Kyiv could soon fall into Russian hands despite Ukraine's resilient fight. So again, the Secretary of Defense, according to Axios, Austin told lawmakers tonight that Russian mechanized forces, which came from Belarus, are 20 miles outside of Kyiv. That's from Hans Nichols. Some very concerning news just in the last few minutes. Some very concerning news. Very concerning news. I'll go over it in a second.
guerrilla war. Orangutan war and such.
Oops, hold on a second. I want to thank our moderators. Thanks to our moderators. Linda Belk is there. Thank you, Linda, for moderating. Lexa Fulmer. Cynthia Moon is moderating. Thank you, Cynthia. Also, Kay Lowry Body has been in there. Roxanne Betke, Margaret Riley, Bud Green. And our Twitch mods too. Yeah, I want to go over those two things we just heard. Those are both bad. Bastion Girl, Serrero, Duxor, Idaho Star, Mark and NC, Use Papa Bear, Schulthei, Smoke, Toby. Thank you, mods. And thanks, Paul Hamilton, Emma Dowdy, and everybody else for your support. And Katie Singh Armija, and everybody else for your support. Thank you. Katie is wondering if this might have been done, that Russia might have acted like they were going to do this to panic people. I mean, who knows? We've been kind of on edge here because, pretty on edge, because there were a number of reports suggesting that that Ukraine that Kyiv would be attacked from the air. It has not had tonight. It has not happened yet. So that's from Ilya Ponomarenko. But we showed you, and then, so some reports said that it was expected at 3 a.m. And then at 3:01 a.m., Marco Rubio, right at the time when the attack was supposedly going to happen, right at that time, Marco Rubio posted something, which made it seem like he seemed connected, that he knew about it or something. Where is it here? Did he take it down? Is the Marco Rubio tweet not up anymore? Oh, there it is. Right when the Ruberd missile strike was, or airstrike was on Kyiv, he said, he just posted this right then. He said, "We have only seen the opening phase of Putin's barbaric plan, but it's been more difficult than he expected. There are now indications Kyiv may soon be the focus of his rage, and then the entire world would come to face with a depravity not seen in 80 years. You know, what does that mean? So, but the airstrikes have not happened yet, thank goodness. But some very concerning reports. This one here. Look at the Kyiv Independent. Russian forces hold the city of Konotop. 85,000 people under
There's
siege.
some reports that there's street
They are
fighting
moving
in
to Kyiv.
Konotop.
Under siege means they've surrounded the city. The Sumy Oblast, that's like, you know, think of it as like a state in the U.S. A Sumy governor, Serhiy Zavitsky, says a lot of the region's cities have been encircled by the enemy. A large military group is moving from occupied Sumy towards Kyiv.
That should be encircled soon.
Thomas Thiener thinks that what's happening is what some experts have expected, that Russia is encircling, besieging Ukrainian cities and plans on starving, freezing the people into submission. So that's very worrying. And also we heard Hans Nichols reports that Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, told lawmakers tonight Russian mechanized forces, which came from Belarus, are 20 miles outside of Kyiv. Georgie says there's Konotop heavy fighting. I haven't heard that. But to be clear, the report we just read didn't say there was fighting. The report we read said that the troops were surrounding the city. But maybe there was fighting in there too.
Well, this has got to be an old video. Nobody would be flying with a freaking surveillance light on them. Seems likely, based on the map that I'm seeing here, that the Ukrainians have placed most of their mobile army in defense of Kiev or Kharkov. Kharkov is holding up pretty well, but it does indeed appear like they may have focused on defense of Kiev, what with the air landing being taken care of easily, but being pushed along
Update.
the quarter.
Russians have established checkpoints on the Sumy to Kyiv highway. Russians have established checkpoints on the Sumy to Kyiv highway. So that would be, there's Sumy there. I don't know if they mean Sumy city. Here's the city of Sumy is here. And that's about, I mean, this distance, there's Sumy over here. But Sumy Oblast is like this whole area over here. So I don't know if he means Sumy Oblast or Sumy City. But I guess, I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like people aren't going to be allowed, so people can't drive freely in the country? Like if you live in that country, if you live in Ukraine, you can't just start driving on the highway? Doesn't sound good. Are they keeping people from leaving Kyiv? Are they keeping people from coming into Kyiv? That's from Ilya Ponomarenko. He is a defense reporter in Kyiv. I agree with him. I agree with Thomas C. Thiener. I agree with him. He says, today didn't go as Putin expected. Ukrainians didn't welcome. I sadly agree with him. I very, very sadly agree with him. Today didn't go as Putin expected. Ukrainians didn't welcome his murderers as liberators. Therefore, tomorrow will be worse. Putin will unleash his anger on Ukrainians. I have a very bad feeling about it. Jock says it's a no name. Jock, I judge him by what he writes, and I read a number of papers of him. I don't really care I don't care what his name is or how famous he is. What I care about is that he got a couple papers about the military situation. I thought his papers were well reasoned, and you know what? It turned out he was exactly right so far. He's been exactly right all along. When a lot of people were wrong, he was right. And I agree with his reasoning, Thomas Thiener. I read some of them on the air. So I don't care if he's not famous. He seems like he has a good. I agree with his overall assessment of the. Oh, wow. Hold on a second, guys. I don't know if I can show this. What is this? What is this?
Someone is leaving
It gets shot
Kiev
down or
on
something?
a private airplane at the moment.
Hang on. Hang on. All right, people are saying, hold on. Planes? Oh, planes left Lviv. Hey guys, it looks like some planes, Ukraine Air Force. Where did they take off from? There we go. So, thanks for the heads up. Flight radar, that plane is Ukraine Air Force. No, Ukraine Air Force, and another plane. Two Ukraine Air Force planes are leading another plane which is flying out of Ukraine after taking off from Lviv.
Lviv. Probably the last remnants of the Western diplomats and such leaving, I think, and the no call sign escort is probably something like an F-35 or a high-end drone.
They have a blocked one too? Is there a blocked one too? Hold on. Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, it's the. I'm near certain
Oh,
that
blocked.
it's the last.
Is that Ukraine? I don't know what that one is. All right, let me just
And
post this one.
They're having protective flights on both sides of the things, which to me seems that it's probably Western diplomats leaving. Could be Ukrainian government, but as far as we care, as long as the president and some officials stay in the capital, then it's not the Ukrainian government. If somebody's cowardly enough to run, I'm sure they'll be able to do so. But that looks, based on the city, that's the departure point,
sure
that it's Western diplomats
Thanks
leaving.
for letting me know. Okay, I just posted that. Again.
They're on Polish side of the border.
So going back to flight radar, we have another plane. Now another plane is flying out. Look, 3 Ukraine Air Force planes. Don't post it, guys. You're saying don't post it. So nobody else in the world has flight radar. This is on publicly available radar.
That's like 1 million dumb post messages.
Don't post it. It's literally publicly available radar.
Doesn't matter. Loose lips sink ships. It's good that we know, but know that it's
already
still
it's out of
military
the airspace.
intelligence.
It's not even in the airspace. Gosh. covering news. I'm covering news. It's a publicly available radar.
I'll be back in a moment.
Gosh.
I'm not gonna be party to revealing Ukrainian military information at the moment. Might be minor, but it doesn't change the fact that it's military information.
Russian airborne troops seized control of the Gostomel airfield and airbase in the northern outskirts of the capital Kiev. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed that they would be encircled and crushed. The airfield is located just 38 kilometers away from the center of the capital. Located alongside the airfield is the Antonov Airport. This is Ukraine's most important international cargo airport, as well as a key military air base. It is also the base of the world's largest cargo plane, the AN-225. The fighting there is the closest that Russian forces have gotten to the capital on the first day of the invasion. Eyewitness accounts saying that 2 fighter jets had fired missiles at the Ukrainian ground units as the assault got underway. Smoke was seen rising from the scene. Images appear to show an assault by helicopter-borne troops. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry says the country's military has destroyed 74 Ukrainian military facilities, including 11 air bases. With us on the broadcast for more perspectives is Nicholas Grossman, an international relations professor at the University of Illinois and the senior editor of ARC Digital. Thanks very much for being here with us. Get us up to speed with your assessment of how the West has responded to this Russian full-scale attack on Ukraine. We've seen a series of statements, condemnation, pledges of support, but how far will they go to prevent further escalation on the ground?
How far will the West go is a really important question. So far, they have followed an unusual strategy of disclosing a lot of Russian moves in advance, of revealing intelligence whenever they thought that Russia was lying, trying to stage a false flag, offering false rationales, or even planning something that they weren't admitting. That, of course, did not end up deterring the invasion sufficiently. Also, what the West has done is spend a lot of both money and effort giving weapons to the Ukrainians, including things like Javelin anti-tank missiles. And those are something that seem to be making at least some of a difference in the fighting on the ground, making it more difficult for Russia to advance. However, the Russian military is decently stronger than the Ukrainian military and will almost certainly be able to achieve its immediate military goals, perhaps not larger political goals, but immediate military goals. And so the West is now thinking about not just with sending a signal to Russia, but also sending a signal to potential future aggressors, whether that is in Russia or perhaps, say, China with Taiwan. So mostly the West has tried to organize a lot of large economic penalties, of sanctions that we can already see taking effect in the Russian stock market, had its worst day since the 2008 financial crisis. The Russian ruble is crashing, and there is at least talk among Western capitals of potentially trying to crack down on a lot of individual Russians, such as, for example, Russian oligarchs who have some say, high-end real estate in places like London or New York, perhaps with laundered money, or Miami or a variety of other cities. And we will see if the West really follows through on its harsh sanctions threat to really go all the way, because that will have economic blowback elsewhere too, including in their own countries.
Right. Speaking of that, how effective will sanctions be, even if they are tougher measures? We are expecting the U.S. president to announce a fresh set in just a short while from now, but how effective will sanctions be anymore?
At first, sanctions probably won't do anything to change Russia's behavior. They seem pretty intent on a full-out military assault against Ukraine, of most likely aimed at some sort of regime change, perhaps installing a pro-Russian puppet in the government, as opposed to what we were hoping was maybe more limited aims of just fighting in the eastern parts of Ukraine that had declared their own independence that Ukraine was rejecting. So the Russian military probably won't be stopped. It However, will do a lot of damage to the Russian economy. That might create pressure on Putin, on his inner circle, and will also send a signal to others in the future when they look back on this and say either, oh, wow, that really worked out for Russia, we should do something like that too, or with all those penalties that Russia suffered, it ended up not being worth it in the end. But that's also much more long-term. Short-term, sanctions can't really do anything besides make Russia feel a degree of punishment for its actions.
Right. Nicholas, let's also talk about the statements that we have already seen coming in. What meaning do the pledges of support and the statements of condemnation have now that the Russian attack is already underway?
So the statements are pretty much a statement of principle and not all that much more. They're also a signal of critics of Russia's actions, of opponents of Russia's actions, signals to each other that they are trying to muster the will for a harsh response. Russia is most likely gambling that the West and other advanced economies, you can add, for example, Japan has imposed some pretty strict sanctions already, that these international community will end up wimping out, that they will ultimately decide, you know, we are not willing to take the damage to our economies of going really full out with these sanctions. Maybe the West will do it at first, but Russia is gambling that they will lose interest, you know, maybe in a few months, maybe in a year or two, and decide that they would rather make more money. So the statements are not going to stop the Russian military from invading. They unfortunately are not going to stop a lot of death and suffering inside Ukraine. But what they are doing is making a statement of principle and working towards trying to have a unified response.
Right. Now that the Russian attack has happened, and despite those warnings and threats and sanctions coming in from the West, what is your assessment of the potential of the NATO, the European Union, the United States to protect Ukraine as of now?
Well, NATO and the United States are not really trying to protect Ukraine. Ukraine is not in NATO, which means that it is not the US and, say, the UK, France, other countries are not under any sort of treaty obligation to defend Ukraine. And the unfortunate reality is Russia cares more about Ukraine than the United States does, and that NATO does as a whole. And this is something that everybody knows. It's a factor of geography and history more than anything else. And since everybody knows that NATO cares less about Ukraine than Russia does, then NATO is not willing to go to war over Ukraine. I would personally not advise being willing to risk starting World War III over Ukraine. And so while, for example, US President Joe Biden has been very clear that the United States will defend any NATO country, so think Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, anyone that is in Eastern Europe or elsewhere and possibly menaced by Russia. But since they are not obligated to defend Ukraine, and since they would not be able to militarily defend Ukraine without a really large-scale direct war against Russia, which could risk nuclear war, they're not going to try. The Ukrainians, when it comes to the actual fighting, the Ukrainians are on their own. The most that outside countries are going to do is provide them with weaponry, provide them with economic support where they can, potentially humanitarian assistance where they can, rhetorical support, certainly internationally. It's probably safe to assume that some covert intelligence officers of foreign countries are on the ground trying to push things a little in a favorable direction, but their ability will be limited. The dominant force there, by a lot, is the Russian military, and they're going to be able to dictate outcomes more than others.
Right. So what could the West have done differently, according to you, or have they done their best, in your view?
I think the West has done pretty well that especially in the short term, longer term, there are some questions that I think reasonable questions about NATO expansion after the end of the Cold War. However, I am very skeptical that if the West had said, for example, okay, Russia, Ukraine will never join Ukraine will never join NATO, we promise, that Putin would have said something like, oh, great, that's all we ever wanted, thank you. It seems that where a lot of this is going back to 2014 during the Maidan Revolution, when Ukrainian demonstrators got a president to resign. And ever since then, that was in response to that, that was when Russia took Crimea and started invading Eastern Ukraine at the beginning. The first time they start doing that and encouraging separatists there. So it looks like Putin has wanted a pro-Russian leader restored to Ukraine since 2014 and has tried a variety of ways to get it and has now decided to go with a military assault. And perhaps the most telling thing here was the speech that Putin gave publicly explaining the war to the Russian public, where he did not talk about NATO all that much. He did not claim, he did not even make much of an argument about the pretext that Russia is trying to push, in which they are lying about Ukrainians in the East being subject to a genocide. Instead, what he argued primarily was what amounted to Ukraine's not a real country. The Soviet Union should not have even, Vladimir Lenin should not have even drawn the map in such a way that said that Ukraine could be a real country. And his tone and the things that he referenced made it seem like he thinks that Ukraine should be a part of Russia and was intent on conquest regardless. So while I wouldn't say the Western response was perfect, I think it was in the short term, with threats of sanctions and disclosure of Russian activity, and a unified diplomatic response was perhaps more unified, more forceful than Russia expected, and was about as well as they could do. If Russia was determined to attack, there really wasn't much that anybody else could have done within the last few months to stop them.
Oh, you can see it? You can see it? I wasn't looking.
Feels like a good moment to visit Ukraine.
I can't find it right now.
Just
I can't
randomly
find
go
it,
there
though.
for
I'm
a
not gonna worry
vacation.
about it. Hold on. Flashes on camera, people are saying. Oh, OSIN Technical has a picture of it. Here it is. Look. Here, look. Bright flashes in the sky somewhere close to Kyiv. Oh, let me see. OSIN Technical people said. Sorry, I can't find it. I have it on one of my. I have them on one of my lists. Hang on. Yeah, look, something got hit in Kyiv. OSIN Technical. Hang on. Oh, I see. I see. I see what you're looking at. I got it.
Camera four.
4:20:38. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. I don't think. No. No. Fine. Again, a couple loud explosions. Very strange. Just here. You can see it. PM breaking news. quiet again. Let's go back to Flight Radar. Guys, we saw on Flight Radar, there were like 5 planes that appeared to take off, I believe, from Western Ukraine. I'm not sure. Definitely one of them took off from Western Ukraine. See, that one took off from Western Ukraine. And so I think a bunch of planes left Western Ukraine, it looked like. A number of them to be our Air Force planes. And then they went to Warsaw. So now, you know, I'm assuming Russia knew they were in the air. They didn't shoot them down. It's interesting. Maybe they had like a diplomat on board. I don't know. It's just we saw them flying out of again. Look at this one. It flew right out of Lviv. Now Lviv is pretty close to the border. Yeah, I know about the 4cam thing some people are watching, Captain of Crows. Thank you. This is what it's another report. Natasha Bertrand, a CNN team in the Ukrainian capital, report hearing 2 large blasts in central Kyiv and a 3rd loud explosion in the distance early on Friday local time. Elint News posted this. This is from Ben Palker. He's with Politico. He says, reports are that Russian forces are moving en masse on Kyiv from the north, south, and east.
And soon west.
He posted that 19 minutes ago. He is with Politico.
I'd rather lose the eastern suburbs of the city than lose the road connection west if I were Ukrainians. Losing the road connection west from Kiev is certain to cause Kiev to fall. So I would focus heavily on taking the airport and defending the path south from Chernobyl. If the capital gets surrounded, then their hopes of resisting are basically over. It's not going to matter if they lose like half of their country in the east, as long as the capital and the road out of it is safe enough for the civilians to continue evacuating. Every minute we gain is 100 more civilians that escapes to Poland.
Newsweek posted this today. This is from like early from this morning. U.S. expects Kyiv to fall
Odessa
in
is about
days
to
as
fall. The
Ukraine
cameras
source
there have
warns of
gone
encirclement.
silent.
3 U.S. officials have told Newsweek they expect Ukraine's capital to fall to coming forces in days. Although that's this morning, I don't know if their assessment has changed. Country's resistance to be effectively neutralized soon thereafter. The officials said that Moscow's focus would be to encircle Ukrainian forces and force them to surrender or be destroyed. They expect Kyiv to be taken within 96 hours, and then the leadership of Ukraine to fall in about a week's time. And Russia's thunderous attacks last night with ground personnel operations so far appear to be just the initial phase of what may be a more comprehensive ground campaign. After the air in the end, in the artillery end, and the ground war really starts, I think Kyiv falls in a few days, said this former U.S. intelligence officer. The military may last slightly longer, but this isn't going to last long. Wow. A source close to President Zelensky's government said Ukraine is holding better than they expected. That does appear to be the case, at least on the first day. I hear some birds singing on the stream. Plane is turning around. Hold on.
Yeah, the unmarked plane was clearly an escort plane, and now that the planes are in Polish territory, it's gonna turn back. It was probably one of
Phil
those
Stewart from
Ukrainian
Reuters
drones.
says a private volunteer group from Florida said it has launched an attempt to usher about 24 Americans out of Ukraine in the first evacuation of U.S. citizens since the country came under Russian military attack. The group is the Tampa-based nonprofit Project Dynamo. Oh, here's a video. PM breaking news. Video shows large explosion in Kyiv.
It definitely looks like a nuke to me.
That was big. Look at that. Look at that.
Or a
That's a
fuel
big
air bomb.
explosion. I wonder if it was like a weapons dump or something. Look at this. Wow. Look at that. That's huge. These are buildings. That was enormous.
Yeah, that looked like a MOAB or FOAB to a military base. Close to being a tactical nuke in terms of yield, I think. Fuel or ammunition.
Joseph thinks Ukraine is successfully using drones to target Russian battalions. I've heard nothing about it. I have no idea. Thank you, Joseph. Oh, some people in our chat are wondering if it could have been an air defense intercepting something that exploded. It's an interesting question. It's interesting. Oh, look, guys, this might have been the explosion right here. Look, this might have been the explosion. Reported air defense system interception over Kyiv in the last 15 minutes. Wow. From Elin News. That's probably what the explosion was. Wow. Unbelievable. What was it? That's from Elin News. Crazy. Elint News thinks those planes that were flying out of Ukraine to Poland thinks it's probably resupply of Ukrainian armed forces. Looks like U.S. may give them weapons in Poland and then they'll bring them back themselves. That's interesting. Although, I don't know if Russia knows that, would Russia let the planes come back? I would think if Russia thought that that was happening, they might not want the planes in the sky. Breaking news, guys, breaking news. Breaking news, look, he just posted this. He just posted that. Missile strikes on Kyiv again now. He just posted this now. Neil Howard's there. He just posted this 2 minutes ago. I didn't see anything. Unless the tweet just got out. That can't. I'm going to unretweet it. I think it might have been a delayed tweet or something. He's there. He's in Ukraine. He's in Kyiv. But this is 2 minutes ago, so that wasn't. That's not 10 minutes ago. That's 2 minutes ago. I don't know what he heard. I don't think there's a 2-minute delay in the live stream. I don't think there's a 2-minute delay in the live stream. Live cam went dark. I didn't see that. I'm watching. I mean, I'm watching a couple. All right, hang on, folks. Woofer says, "I see attacks on Kyiv began again." Oh no, he's referring to earlier. That's earlier. Oh, guys, look at this. Here, OSINT Technical posted this. Something large, this was that explosion a while ago, like 10 minutes ago. Something large was intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses over Kyiv minutes ago. Posted by OSINT Technical. A plane? A drone?
An ICBM.
Germans and historically. And so, of course, it's a completely different mindset in these countries.
starting the conflict in Ukraine.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
Part of the new sanctions package announced by President Joe Biden will target 4 of Russia's largest banks, effectively freezing all their assets in the U.S. and severely limiting the country's ability to do business in the world's major currencies. While Biden promised the sanctions will impose severe costs to the Russian economy, he stopped short of sanctioning Putin directly and cutting off Russia from the SWIFT international banking system, a move the Ukrainian government has been calling for.
The sanctions that we are proposing for the banks is of equal consequence, maybe more consequence. It is always an option, but right now that's not the position that the rest of Europe wishes to take.
Biden called this a dangerous moment for Europe and announced he was sending more troops to help support NATO allies, but he's ruled out sending in U.S. soldiers to defend Ukraine.
As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power.
Biden warned that it was necessary to take swift action now to stop Putin. Failure to act, said Biden, would only embolden the Russian president.
Well, Emergency Council bringing together the 27 member states of the European Union wrapped up in Brussels. EU leaders have already agreed to impose new sanctions on Moscow, but not going so far as to cut Russia off the SWIFT international payment system. The latter showing divisions within the bloc about how far to go. Well, Ursula von der Leyen and French President Emmanuel Macron spoke to the press at the conclusion of this emergency meeting, vowing to hold Moscow accountable.
Today's events are a watershed moment for Europe.
If they can get through this night without airstrikes there. Though who knows when things happen, what time things happen at. Alexei Sorokin says he's with Kyiv Independent. He says missile strikes on Kyiv confirmed by Interior Ministry. I don't know what missiles they were. TC says bomber down in Kyiv, landed in residential area, pics coming soon. Maybe it was a plane. I don't know. Guys, Matthew Chance, is this from 20 minutes ago? What is this? 4 minutes ago, big explosion in Ukraine capital. Is this is 5 minutes ago. I heard nothing 5 minutes ago. Is this a delayed tweet too? Is that like 20 minutes late? I mean, he posted it at 9:42. Maybe his tweet got delayed. I'm confused. No, he's there. He's there. He's not looking at a video. He is there. Oh, Rob Lee posted this. Reportedly video of fighting in Sumy tonight. one said it was live. It was earlier this evening. No one's saying it's live. Every time I play a video, 50 people say, that was earlier. Right, it was earlier. It's not live. No one's saying it's live. By tonight, he means this
Reports of gunfire in
past
Kiev.
evening. Could have been 8 hours ago. Yesterday night? Oh, some people were saying it was yesterday night. People are saying it's from yesterday? Oh, maybe it was. All right, I don't know. But a lot of times people are just like, it's not, it's old. But you know, it's this video. See, New York Times. It says February 24th, New York Times. February 24th. Oh, Evan Hill posted this. Videos verified by the Times showed the first heavy urban... Oh, this is the first heavy urban fighting of the invasion. Oh, I see. Same video. Crazy. Crazy. What, guys? This is so confusing. I'm really confused. So a couple different people, this is from 5 minutes ago. A couple different people 5 minutes ago said Kyiv is under heavy missile attack. But I've been watching multiple live streams and I haven't seen anything. So I don't know why, again, maybe he's hearing something or something like that. Ilya Ponomarenko. But I am watching 2 different live streams. I don't know what said dead strikes are. Fizzy G. But thank you, Fizzy G. Oh, suppression of enemy air defenses? Destruction of enemy air defenses? I don't know. I mean, there hasn't been many explosions that we've heard. Thank you, Fizzy G. Or Fizzy01, I'm sorry. Yet there haven't been many, I mean, there was that period of a couple of explosions, but so I still don't know what that thing shot down was. Maybe it was a plane. I don't know.
My phone is almost out of battery.
Mark Hertling says, there are historical examples where a force with superior will can defeat a force with superior resources. Forces with unshakable belief in what they are fighting for, with the right support, can overcome a force that seemingly has superior resources. The Russians have an advantage in resources. The quantity of their force provides quality on all its own. Their equipment is relatively good, not great. Their artillery and long-range fires are devastating, and they have air superiority. But Russian training sucks. I say this having seen Russians train and how they conduct exercises. Their log and intel is clumsy. Their soldiers are mostly one-year conscripts, not professionals. They have poor NCO corps. Their officers, for the most part, are terrible. blah, 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 blah. Maybe I'll read the whole thing later. Don't discount the Russian army's increasing unwillingness to fight for Putin. They will see their cause as being if they don't already, and they will experience more battlefield deaths than they anticipated, which will cause even more protests at home. It will likely be a long fight. Putin will be increasingly portrayed as a loser. He's not a risk taker, he's a gambler. You can mitigate risk, but you can't overcome a losing gamble. He thinks Putin will go the way of Stalin, Hitler, Ceausescu, Saddam. Look, we've talked about this on the air. We've talked about how risky this is for him. And I've said on the air many times, I said it could work out that he loses his rule over it.
So, thoughts, Mr. Threat Map? Are we disbanding
He
the
says
unified human
Ukraine will be a stronger
personality and
nation, but only
splitting
if
into
the
small
Ukrainians
factions
decide.
again? Are we aiming for the ascension, or is this the end of the ascension debate? We were pretty
Ukraine's
close.
initial defense wasn't great today. It will improve. Whether called an insurgency or a guerrilla war, Ukraine will wear down an enemy that already has low morale and even lower support from their population back in Mother Russia. See protests.
Though it does
That's
feel
interesting.
like this
Interesting thread
generation
from Mark
needs to
Kirby.
get its war out of its system. There's so much. The world leader is bad because it's the world leader, which admittedly, the world leader, America, could be doing better. But it's not the frickin' Roman Empire, man. It's not the hellhole of all hellholes. It's fairly good as far as imperial, capitalist, greedy, etc. overlords go. So that being said, I've said it before, I would prefer to live in some kind of ascensionist paradise, yada yada. But reality is reality, and reality is that as far as imperial overlords go, the US isn't the worst to have. That's the final result. When it comes to somebody thinking they do a better job in declaring war on the US just to prove their point, I'm generally very hesitant. Because if you are better at running the planet than the US is, what you'll do is not war. What you'll do is the Chinese model. You'll build your economy. And once your economy is larger than the US, you'll just go, well, I suppose that's the end of that then. And it's the end of the discussion. But if you want to do this with some amount of paranoia, it looks like people are assuming that they run the system better because they might defeat the US militarily, and they're hedging all their bets on their more powerful military. By the way, it's weird that Russia is supporting my argument on this map, which just goes to prove that either Putin is playing some weird game or the Russian guy in charge of the threat map is saying enough of this shit. One or the other. Well, like I said a couple of days ago, if this thing doesn't blow over very quickly, in that the Russians were right, then as soon as the forces roll into Ukraine, that as soon as the forces roll into Ukraine, you'd see essentially a desert war scenario where the Saddam army collapses in a matter of hours, and when there's like the US invasion, they say that if you turn your tanks, artillery or turret or whatever towards Baghdad and stop all movement, then you will not be hit by the American forces. And in a lot of reports from the first and second Iraq war, there was a lot of people who essentially said fuck fighting for Saddam. So had that happened in Ukraine, where the Ukrainian army essentially welcomed the Russian invasion and were like, finally we can get over this shit and such, I'd have minor qualms about it. I don't like military police operations. I've opposed them my entire life, starting with the Iraq war, but But since it looks like the Ukrainians actually do want independence, they may not want a Western puppet. That much is clear. They may not want to live like, for example, Hungary or Bulgaria, in terms of their status in the Western world, considered to be the roughnecks, if you will. But living under a Russian occupation is not going to happen, which to me means that at least prior to this invasion, Ukraine living under the kind of Western occupation that is scaring the Russians seems at the very least unlikely, because keep in mind, Finland has had a very long and very bloody history with Russia. So we're not coming from Germany, that has had basically one bad war with Russia, or France, that tried to do a single push to their capital and lost, and that was basically the end of it. We, over here in the Scandinavian region, have fought with Russia for the last 10,000 years. So that being said, our support for NATO at this particular time, during the highest levels of crisis that Europe has ever undergone through after the Second World War, and perhaps the highest risk of nuclear war that the world has ever seen, our support for NATO is 30%. Our support for EU is 70%. Our support for having a defensible country that we actually want to defend when you ask the people who'd be assigned to the fronts to fight, support is 80%. But we don't like alliances, be it Western or Eastern. During the Cold War, it was made very clear to us by Russians that if we join their alliance outright, we'll get a lot of benefits. Because Russia during that time, or the Soviet Union during that time in the 60s and 70s, was phenomenally rich, so they weren't bullshitting. We said we'd rather stay out. Simple, we'd rather stay out. We, in the grand moral scheme during that time, thought that the Soviets were probably right. They were probably the good guys. But to join them outright in this situation is not what we're looking for. Now that the situation is much reversed, we're looking at the West as if they're probably the good guy. We don't know. Looks likely that they'd be the good guy during this. Our support for joining them against anybody, even Russia, is at 30%. That's after we've had 10,000 years of fighting with them. So it's not about cowardice. It's about common sense. So to apply the same to Ukraine, there might be a larger demand for accession into NATO or the European Union. But realistically, if it meant giving up an iota of Ukrainian independence, they wouldn't do it, an iota. But now that they're forced into fighting, they are likely to join NATO under any conditions, which brings back my earlier point, which is that if I were a man prone to paranoia and conspiracy theories, which I kind of am, but if I were one who would be really prone to that stuff, I'd consider Russia to be the sheepdog, the minor nations to be the sheep, and America to be the farmer. Because this makes sense only if you assume that Russia wants to push all the neutrals.
At 4:25, the enemy fired a rocket strike at a border unit. As a result of, what is this? This is a new update from Defense Ministry. At 4:25 a.m., like 40 minutes ago, the enemy attacked the border guard unit in Zaporizhia region by rockets. As a result of attack, there are casualties. Okay, so this is an update. Dead and wounded, dead and wounded. Among the border guards, there are dead and wounded, it says. Look. So this is a report. This is the Ukraine Defense Ministry. Make sure it is. Border guard of Ukraine.
Ukraine has already shot down about 10 times more craft than the entire Western Bloc lost in Afghanistan 1, Iraq 1, Iraq 2, and Yugoslavia. They've done more damage in a day to the Russians.
Rob Lee says this sounds more like an aircraft than a cruise missile. Look, that's what Rob Lee says. I don't know.
I'd consider that interesting. We were aware of the inability of fourth-generation aircraft to seriously hamper modern air defenses, but still pretty much.
Of Ukraine just posted that Russian forces.
This is how much weed I got from my generator after 3 days of farming.
Attacked.
So it's looking like give me until my next payday, and then
Ukrainian
I'll be
forces.
smoking the stuff I get from my
Ukrainian
payday, and
border
after
guards.
that is done, then the reactor will be completed.
Guards with rockets.
It looks
that would
like
be
my problem was,
at
as I kind of
4:25,
feared,
so
the
that
fact
would be,
that it was from the
about
street
45
seeds.
minutes ago.
So cannabis seeds seem to be
Zaporizhzhia.
unable to germinate if they've been harvested for more than one cycle, like bananas don't have seeds in that sense. You have to do with cuttings and plantings. So I'm not surprised that the green movement thinks genetically engineered plants that sterilize themselves within a single cycle is normal because they've been used to
Don't
weed.
post, yeah. It's on Facebook. They just posted it themselves. Border Guard of Ukraine just posted that Russian forces attacked Ukrainian border guards with rockets in Zaporizhzhia 45 minutes ago. Right? I assume. Zaporizhzhia time.
Where is Zaporizhzhia? Southeastern, okay. I always have to do this when I remember the directions.
I just want to make sure this, it says border guard. That's the translation. Where's their site? Not there. State Border Guard Service. With rockets or missiles. I think that worked. I think that worked. There it is. All right, hang on. Can't do two things at once. Hang on. Hang on. Yeah, I already showed the video that Elin News posted. I already showed it. We showed it earlier. I think this, do we see this angle yet? This is from Ukrainian Pravda. I don't know if we showed this one. Wow. OSIN Technical thinks it was a jet. So does Rob Lee.
Полетел на брифинг. А вот сейчас, да, летит уже, слышите, да? Назад летит. Слышите, да?
See, the idea is that sounds like a plane, and then a little bit later you see it get exploded. So maybe it was a plane. I don't know. There's no wreckage of a plane. Thanks.
Боже, вот это взрыв только что был. Смотрите, смотрите, ребята, боже, смотрите.
Okay, maybe we saw that before. Okay, BNO News says apartment complex in Kyiv hit by debris from falling plane, if it was a plane. No word on casualties. Next says an air alert has been declared in Odessa. In Vinnytsia and Odessa, air raid sirens were turned on. That's from Nexta. That was 7 minutes ago.
Well, if you insist, we can get you a nice Linus girl to torture you, if that helps. Let's let out some of the juices. Like Maria Carey in leather. That's our idea of torture. Moving on. It's not funny making jokes about torture.
Okay, look at this. More photos from the impact site in Kyiv. Going by the damage, whatever it seems to have been relatively large. Aurora Intel and Anastasia Lapatina. Source Anton Gerashenko. Wow.
You notice that Kiev's fire department is
Look at
still
this.
working.
See the
People
windows blown out?
haven't ran. You know what I mean? Fire department
Wow.
is still working. Police are still working. People are still driving normal cars around town.
Man, look at this. It's Aurora Intel.
If I were to go to Kiev,
Justin
the only
says
choice
some
I would
missiles sound
make
like a
is
plane.
join
Maybe
the
it
fire
was, I mean-
department or emergency medics.
Rob Lee, who is a real expert, he thinks it's a plane. Yeah, hopefully nobody got hurt.
A lot of people got hurt, I can guarantee you, with that level of damage. Unless everybody was in the bomb shelters, which is very unlikely because Kiev has nowhere near enough shelter capacity for its population. No, shit like this is why Finland maintains population storage capacity for more than our entire population, because we're counting on there being tourists in our country when we actually
I just
go
heard
to
what,
war,
what
so we
sounded
can't
like
actually
a small
calculate for
explosion.
just.
I don't know. It might have been in the distance. I just heard it on
The
on
capital has shelters for
live stream shot,
800,000
but
in a population
wasn't
of
very
500,000. That's why we upkept them. Because sometimes this shit happens even amongst people who are good and loving and kind to each other. Not to mention the real world.
we're at 11 hours already. NATO calls an urgent meeting about the situation in Ukraine 9 hours from now. Jack Detch.
There's some more claims of fighting in the airport. I'm just looking at the comment feed. You can hear the airplanes on the Kyiv radar. Protect us, white Jesus. Biden is going to build back Ukraine better. Yeah, I think Finland might actually join the NATO. Depending on how this goes.
All right. I think I'm going to give this a few more minutes. We've been on the air for 11 hours now. We've been on the air for 11 hours. Our viewer Anthony Childers says attacks tend to be pronounced during daylight because Russians have little night vision capabilities on their weapons platforms. That's what Anthony says. I have no idea.
I heard the same, but
anyways,
it's not as bad as that.
You know what? I think right now, given the relative quiet right now, I think I am going to get off the air because I need to get some sleep. I really do. I did not sleep that much last night. If there's huge news, I can come back on the air, but I think it's time.
Блядь, звони маме, говори, что ты думаешь. Разбили, разграбили.
3 days after Russian invasion of Ukraine, France surrenders. 4 days, Germany invades Poland. Belgium retakes the Congo. We're all taking back our territories. Finland takes 2/3 of the Eurasian continent. I kid.
Украинский или нет? Знак звезды. Говорят. Ну, лишь сказали, на видео снимать можно. Вот основные войска подходят. Без опознавательных знаков.
Russian figures of large Z. Ukrainians and Russians use much of the same equipment, so Russians have tagged their units with large Z. That was probably what that flight was about, the overseas throwing all their stuff in Ukraine. Yeah, the US diplomats from Ukraine now working from Poland. You know what I'm thinking? Find it. Never mind. This does indeed seem to be on loop.
Жесть. Самолет, ёпта. Жесть.
It is day 2 of the Russian invasion into Ukraine, and its forces continue to press deep into Ukraine. The battle has reached the outskirts of Ukraine's capital, Kiev. In a midnight address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country was left alone to fight Russia after the Kremlin launched a full-scale invasion. He also warned that Russian sabotage groups had entered the capital, urged residents to be vigilant and observe curfew rules.
Але є й друге. Ми залишаємось наодинці у захисті нашої держави. Хто готовий воювати разом з нами? Чесно, не бачу таких. Хто готовий дати Україні гарантію вступу до НАТО? Чесно, всі бояться.
Across Ukraine, at least 137 people have been killed in the first day of fighting. President Zelensky called up conscripts, reservists countrywide to come and fight as he ordered general mobilization. Till now, over 100,000 people have been displaced as Russian missiles and shelling rained down on Ukrainian cities. The first Ukraine refugees have already begun trickling into Hungary and Romania.
Hungary? Shouldn't it be
And for
Poland and
perspective on
Romania?
this, we're now being joined by Lester Munson, Senior Fellow at the National Security Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. Russia seized control of the Chernobyl nuclear plant. What can you tell us of the significance of this?
Well, it's an incredibly dangerous thing if you think about it. There is still radioactive waste being protected by a giant shield. If the fighting had done anything to disrupt that shield, we could have seen catastrophic consequences for Ukraine, for Russia, for other neighboring countries. So it's a very somber reminder that very much is at stake during this Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Right. Now, we also spoke to some experts yesterday to understand the situation. Now, some believe that sanctions from the United States and the West are not bound to have a very tragic impact on Russia. What do you make of this?
I think that's correct. These sanctions that you've been discussing so far on the show are important. They should be done, and it's critical that the West show Russian leadership that it's willing to take this action. But at the end of the day, none of this will deter Vladimir Putin from doing what he wants to do in Ukraine. In order to get to that place, we would have to contemplate the cutoff of Russian energy supplies to Europe. And that means supplying Europe with energy sources from elsewhere, probably from the United States, perhaps other places. And so far, we haven't seen Europeans or the Americans willing to do that.
Also, just for more clarity, if not sanctions, then what other steps can the United States and the Western allies take to deter Russia and aid Ukraine?
Well, the United States and its allies can be doing as much as it can to help those Ukrainians who are actually fighting the Russians by providing them with weapons and other assistance as appropriate, so that Russia bears a huge cost for its terrible mistake in invading Ukraine.
Right. Also, Russian troops are inching closer to Kiev. What do you think is the way forward here?
Well, Russian troops are no doubt looking for President Zelensky. They want to replace him with someone who will be a Russian puppet. He appears to be, at least on occasion, out on the front lines. So this is going to be a very interesting cat and mouse game that's going on inside Ukraine. We'll see how long it lasts.
Right. And also, would you say Russia's ambitions are limited to just Ukraine?
Well, President Biden said today that he thinks Vladimir Putin is looking beyond just Ukraine. That should be of great concern to Europeans. There are NATO countries right on the border of Russia, Poland, the Baltic states, just to name four. So if this conflict does metastasize into other areas, it immediately would trigger possible NATO action. The United States and other NATO allies would be compelled to come to the aid of countries threatened by Russia. In that case, we would see a much larger scale of fighting.
Right, and that in fact brings me to my next question. There are still questions over what President Putin's objectives here are. What is your assessment?
It seems fairly clear that what he wants to do is completely subjugate Ukraine to his will, and probably by decapitating is the term used, the leadership of the country. Right now, Ukraine is a threat to Vladimir Putin personally, because Ukraine is a country that is cousin to Russia. It is a democracy. It largely respects human rights and the rule of law. And for that example to be sitting there of a people with such close affinity to the Russians is a direct threat to Vladimir Putin's rule. So he needs to demonstrate that that's not going to work.
So would you say that it's too late for diplomacy, or is there still some hope?
It is probably too late for diplomacy, but of course I think Zelensky and the West would be willing to talk under the right circumstances. But right now this is about the fight for Ukraine.
All right, Mr. Lester, thank you so much for joining us with your analysis of the situation. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move. bringing you up to speed with what is happening in Ukraine. It's day 2 of the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Its forces continue to press deep into Ukraine. The battle has reached the outskirts of Ukraine's capital, Kiev. In a midnight address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his country was left alone to fight Russia after the Kremlin launched full-scale invasion. He also warned that Russian sabotage groups had entered the capital, urged residents to remain vigilant and observe curfew rules.
Але є й друге. Ми залишаємось наодинці у захисті нашої держави. Хто готовий воювати разом з нами? Чесно, не бачу таких. Хто готовий дати
чесно.
до НАТО? Чесно. Всі бояться.
Across Ukraine, at least 137 people have been killed in the first day of fighting. President Zelensky called up conscripts, reservists countrywide to come and fight as he ordered general mobilization. Till now, over 100,000 people have been displaced as Russian missiles and shelling rained down on Ukrainian cities. The first Ukraine refugees have already begun trickling into Hungary and Romania. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Eugene Shasovsky, a non-resident fellow at Newslines Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, how effective do you think these new sanctions announced by President Joe will also be?
The next several days. But as Biden mentioned in his address today, the sanctions are intended to severely weaken the Russian economy and then by that nature to force Putin to reconsider or at least make these actions much more costly. But I think it'll take at least a few weeks till we know for sure the impact of the sanctions on the Russian economy, although we're starting to see some initial signs right now.
All right, and how would you assess Putin's objectives here and its impact in Europe?
Right, so Putin has made it clear that the ultimate objective, and it's not exactly clear how he will achieve this, but the goal is to completely demilitarize Ukraine and essentially neutralize it. So that means that Ukraine will no longer be seeking to join the EU and especially NATO, and whether that happens by political capitulation or by military force, that's the stage that we're in right now. But I think that Putin will not stop at anything until he gets that ultimate goal, which is to basically neutralize completely Ukraine.
Right, and this conflict, of course, threatens to displace millions of people. Residents have already started crossing over to Poland. What can we expect now?
Certainly, refugee flows will start to flow. We're already seeing the initial signs of that, as you mentioned. But I do think that the Ukrainian military, at least in these very early stages, has put up quite a strong fight and an indication that it's going to defend to the best of its abilities. We're still in the very early stages, as I mentioned, of the intervention, but I think this is going to be a very long, if not long, then very costly fight for Russia, and the Ukrainians will have at least some kind of support, albeit not direct, from the West and from NATO.
Right. And like you mentioned earlier, sanctions have done little to deter Russia. So what form of support can we now see for Ukraine apart from sanctions?
Well, I think the sanctions could actually get more severe as we go along, but we've seen frontline NATO states, especially Poland and the Baltic states, and the US itself as the NATO leader, provide weaponry for Ukraine, provide basically logistical support, things of that nature. Now, it really depends on how the military phase plays out, and in terms of whether Russia decides to try to occupy major cities such as Kiev or other strategic sites, or it will try to cut off Ukrainian forces. But I think certainly politically and in terms of materiel, we will see that support from NATO countries.
Right, and also just for more clarity on this, how do you see the impact of this on international order?
Well, certainly this has already shaken up the European security order. And because this has already involved other countries. It's not just Russia, but Belarus, which has hosted Russian military troops. It's not clear whether Belarus has taken part actively in the campaign yet, but it certainly played a host to those troops. So that brings in another actor. And then you have Poland, the Baltic states, Romania, frontline NATO countries, which are also very likely to be directly impacted, at least in terms of refugees, but perhaps even some spillover. So clearly the European security order is now being tested significantly, and we could see this ripple out depending on the extent to which US on the Ukrainian side and perhaps even China on the Russian side get involved.
Right. Mr. Sosovsky, just before we wrap up, how do you assess the cost of this Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Well, it's already coming at tremendous human cost as we're starting to see the casualties begin. And I think it's going to be tremendously costly politically for Putin and for Russia. We've already started to see some protests within Russia against the actions. Those have been relatively small, but I think significant. But the costs will be high for sure.
All right. Mr. Sosovsky, thank you so much for joining us with your insights of this.
Thank you.
Now, amid a raging conflict, French President Emmanuel Macron called Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Macron has demanded an immediate halt to Moscow's offensive in Ukraine. According to the Elysee Palace, the French president called Vladimir Putin after having spoken with the Ukrainian president, and in coordination with him, Macron demanded the immediate halt of Russian military operations. But the account by Macron's aides contrasted with that given by the Kremlin. The Kremlin said in a statement that Putin gave an exhaustive explanation to Macron. Putin reasoned why he ordered his forces into his pro-Western neighbor. The Kremlin said that the two leaders had a serious and frank exchange of views about Ukraine. This was the first known contact between Putin and a Western leader since the Kremlin ordered a massive invasion of Ukraine. The operation has been widely condemned by Western leaders, with several ordering fresh sanctions on Moscow. Earlier on Thursday, the French president had told his nation, I'm quoting here, "We will respond without weakness to this act of war." He had added that the Russian attack on Ukraine marked a turning point in the history of Europe and France. Today, Emmanuel Macron says that it is useful to keep alive the chance of dialogue. With Russian President Vladimir Putin, the statement came after a summit of EU leaders. In Macron's words, again quoting here, while condemning, while sanctioning, it remained useful to leave this path open so that the day when the conditions can be fulfilled, we can obtain a cessation of hostilities. Macron emerged as the West's chief negotiator in the final days before Putin raised the stakes. Macron has engaged in shuttle diplomacy between the Kremlin and the West as the French president is de facto leader and holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Like we mentioned, Russia is facing severe sanctions by Western allies after Moscow invaded Ukraine in the early hours of Thursday. In the biggest assault by a state since the end of the Second World War, the United Kingdom announced unprecedented sanctions against Kremlin, targeting not only banks and financial institutions, but also individuals.
For our part today, the UK is announcing the largest and most severe package of economic sanctions that Russia has ever seen. With new financial measures, we're taking new powers to target Russian finance.
And here's a more comprehensive look at the 10-point sanctions that Britain has imposed. Firstly, all major Russian banks will have their assets frozen, and they will all be excluded from the UK financial system, including the state-owned VTB, Russia's second biggest bank. This will stop them from clearing payments through the UK. Second, major Russian companies in the state will not be able to raise, finance, or borrow money on UK markets. Third, asset freezes will be put on 100 new individuals or entities since the fall of the Soviet Union 3 decades ago. London's capital markets have been the favored destination for Russian companies seeking to raise money outside of Moscow. One of the individuals targeted in the new sanctions is Kirill Shamalov, Putin's once son-in-law. Fourth here, Russia's flagship carrier, the Aeroflot airline, will be banned from landing in the UK. 5. Export of dual-use equipment that can have military applications is banned. And 6th here, the UK will stop exports of high-tech items and oil refinery equipment. 7, there will be a limit on deposits Russians can make to UK bank accounts. Similar financial sanctions will be extended to Belarus for its role in the invasion. Johnson also said that there is potential to cut Russia out from the SWIFT payments, adding that nothing is off the table right now.
Miserable, needless suffering of those who did not get their booster. That could be it.
And beyond, correspondent Nick Harper has sent us this report from Washington, D.C. Let's listen in.
Fourth day in the United States that the US government has imposed different sets of sanctions. This latest round, as you mentioned, targeting 4 banks, cutting off their abilities to transact with the United States, freezing their assets that are here in the US, in total assets worth more than $1 trillion. On top of that, also restricting exports of US technology to Russia. The US president said it would make it harder for Russia to be able to do simple things like build boats. On top of that, also targeting some of the largest state-owned Russian companies. The US president saying that would impact a range of Russian sectors, including mining and transportation. And also targeting the Russian elite, those oligarchs, some of them with close ties to President Putin. Now, President Biden says that all of these things combined, plus the last 3 days' worth of sanctions that the US has imposed, will have long-term, lasting effects on the Russian economy. He said that it would have a major hit on Putin's long-term economic ambitions, and that's the hope from the United States.
The world is worried about the safety and well-being of Ukraine, concerned about how big the spillover from the conflict would turn out to be. The Russian police has arrested more than 1,500 people, but the global community continues to protest against the attack. More in our next report.
From Beirut to Berlin to New York City, protesters came out in droves to express condemnation of Russia's all-out invasion of Ukraine, the biggest attack on a European state since World War II. Stop the war, stop bombing Ukraine, stop Putin, were the messages coming from demonstrators in Beirut on Thursday. One Lebanese Ukrainian said he came out in solidarity with what he called his brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
Today we are next to the Russian embassy. I don't know if we can still call it Russia because it's a dictatorship country. It's the renewal of Nazism in Europe.
In Madrid, a protester outside the Russian embassy held a sign showing Putin with a bloody handprint on his face. Spanish actor Javier Bardem joined the demonstrators.
I'm here to demonstrate my condemnation of the Russian Federation's warlike actions against Ukraine. But above all, to the concern over the wave of refugees this could generate as a consequence of this invasion.
After Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday declared war in a televised address, explosions and gunfire were heard in Kyiv. Missiles rained down on Ukrainian targets, and authorities reported columns of troops pouring across Ukraine's borders. Several hundred pro-Ukrainian protesters also gathered near Downing Street in London, calling on their government to impose more sanctions on Russia. Stop! Putin, stop the war! Images showing Putin and deep red blood were also seen in Istanbul, where Ukrainians, some tearful, gathered in dismay. A Ukrainian protester named Maria pleaded with Russian citizens to take a stand against Putin.
Please, Russians, go outside, declare that you are against this war.
Many Russians did just that. According to a protest monitoring group in Russia, police detained more than 1,600 people at anti-war rallies in 53 Russian cities.
And with that, we call to wrap on this bulletin. Stay tuned for World Business Watch on the other side.
think I'm done for the day. I'll return if there's more news. Thank you for watching.